What's going on, everybody? James Hancock here, and back to review True History of the Kelly Gang, which dropped today in the United States, courtesy of IC Films, but it came out in Australia last year. But this movie is an adaptation of a novel by Peter Carey, all about the notorious outlaw Ned Kelly, who in Australia is basically like Wild Bill Hickok, Jesse James, and Billy the Kid, all rolled into one. There have been more biographies written in Australia about this figure than any other character in Australian history. And I would not claim to have any massive insights into the history of Ned Kelly, apart from what I've read on Wikipedia, but I read this great line here by journalist Martin Flanagan where he says, "What makes Ned a legend is not that everyone sees him the same, it's that everyone sees him like a bushfire on the horizon, casting its red glow into the night." That gives you an idea of just how much he's been romanticized. There are a lot of people out there who look upon him as a Robin Hood figure, and there are other people who look upon him as a thief and a murderer. What's helped earn him such a massive place in the history books is the manner in which he was finally caught. As his entire gang was being exterminated, he took on a bunch of constables covered in armor. And he also decided to tell his own history in his own words prior to his death so that his mortal enemies, the English, would not write his history for him. But in terms of the filmmakers bringing this to the screen, Sean Grant handled the adaptation, while director Justin Kurzel directed the film. Now, I've got a bit of a mixed relationship with his career because I did enjoy his 2015 adaptation of Macbeth starring Michael Fassbender. I didn't think it was on the level of some of the adaptations I've seen by directors like Orson Welles or Akira Kurosawa or Roman Polanski, but it was a cool original take on my favorite play by Shakespeare. On the other hand, Justin Kurzel also directed one of the worst films of the last 5 years, Assassin's Creed. Now, I won't claim to be a giant connoisseur on the Assassin's Creed franchise. However, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is one of the most addictive games I've played in the last decade. It basically took over my life at the exclusion of all else for a couple weeks. So I went into Assassin's Creed pretty excited, and I couldn't believe just how bland and forgettable and just utterly unremarkable that movie was. So it feels like with True History of the Kelly Gang, we see Justin Kurzel trying to do everything in his power to reclaim his reputation or rebuild his reputation with a really provocative, high-octane movie-going experience. And what I liked about the movie is that it takes a lot of risks, it takes a lot of big swings creatively. I won't argue that every swing of the bat results in a home run, but I always admire filmmakers when they appear to be throwing caution to the wind with wildly original, irreverent takes on well-known stories, because this is a savage, dirty, violent interpretation of the story of Ned Kelly. And I think for people who enjoy movies about outlaws or people who enjoy movies about the Wild West, obviously this is Australia, not the American Wild West, but Australia in the 1860s and 1870s shares a lot of common ground with the American West at that time. Also, I should say that this movie from the outset reminds us that everything that we're about to see is completely untrue. This is their own interpretation of history, although there are certain key historical events that they include in the story. And while a lot of people are going to object to the movie's very slow pace initially, what I liked about the style and tone is how it really allows you to walk a mile in the shoes of these characters, because obviously Australia is a penal colony, and this is a movie that allows you to see the lifestyle of a lot of the descendants of convicts who had been moved there against their will, and it really underlines a lot of the existing divisions between the Irish and the English at that time. In particular, in the form of the character Ellen Kelly, Ned's mother, who teaches him all of his values. We can debate to what extent those values are good values, because all she really cares about is whether or not her kids are loyal to her and are willing to look after her. Because her idea of good parenting is when Ned Kelly's a young boy, is to sell him off to a well-known bushranger, Harry Power, played by the great Russell Crowe, who's absolutely on fire in this movie as a thieving murderer who teaches Ned Kelly all the skills that he's going to need to know as an adult. But it's important for people to know that this movie is not an action movie. This is much more of a character study, where we see Ned Kelly being pulled in two different directions. Is he going to try to adapt and get along with the English and become part of society? Or is he going to continue to live on the fringes of society and basically be in a state of perpetual war the rest of his life? And we see that struggle for his soul, both as a boy and as a man. As a boy, he's caught between the characters Sergeant O'Neill and Harry Power, played by Charlie Hunnam and Russell Crowe, which peaks in one of the darkest and funniest scenes in the movie, where Russell Crowe quite literally ties a rope around Charlie Hunnam's vital anatomy and encourages the young Ned Kelly to shoot it off with a pistol. And as an adult, Ned's caught between two forces. On one hand, he has his friendship with Constable Fitzpatrick, played by Nicholas Hoult. On the other hand, he's got all of his siblings and friends who call themselves the Sons of Sieve. And these are basically these crazy outlaws who dress in women's clothing and dresses and lingerie in order to confuse and bewilder and frighten the English, which opens the door to some pretty interesting commentary on sexuality and gender, etc. Because these are some really rough, savage, dirty guys who basically kill and drink and screw all day. But on the other hand, they're constantly playing dress up as well, which is definitely something I've never seen in an outlaw movie before. So while the movie definitely slowly but surely builds toward this enormous violent conflict between Ned Kelly's gang and the local police as well as the local army, and while I did enjoy the bloody climax, but I think the best material in the movie is just when we get these character beats. My only grievance against the movie really is that there's this strange pivot point where Ned Kelly goes from this kind of indecisive figure who's alienated from his fellow human beings to suddenly being this charismatic outlaw and leader of men with a gang that's bordering on a small army that worships him like a messiah figure. And I didn't quite buy that transition. There's no moment where he really proves himself or where he really ascends to greatness where I really would believe that so many people would get on board and follow him into a war that they couldn't possibly win. So I think the story's got holes in it, and I think the story's uneven. However, because the photography's so beautiful and the music's so cool and the performances are so intense, I did find myself pretty much gripped and spellbound for most of the movie. And I should give a shout out to some of the other members of the cast. The actress who plays Ned Kelly's wife, Mary Hearn, is Thomasine McKenzie, who people will recognize from Jojo Rabbit. And then the lead playing Ned Kelly, you have George McKay, who I first saw in 1917, but I think he's a marvelous actor. He's got a ton of intensity and this incredible physical presence. He's just so lean and wiry and powerful. It all just gives him this natural charisma that helped me stay on board with the movie, even when I found the screenplay to be a little incomplete. But perhaps one of the main reasons that I got into the movie is that we just don't have the luxury of seeing a lot of new movies right now. I like seeing how a lot of these movies are pivoting to an online release strategy. And I like seeing a filmmaker trying to create bold, original work that's not based on a franchise. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy franchises too, but I feel like the world of cinema needs more than people in tights punching each other. And I like a movie that's so comfortable wallowing in the dark side of humanity. With all these scenes in brothels, or all these scenes with dead bodies being disfigured, this is a movie that's going to make you feel like you've been kind of rolling and wallowing in the mud for a couple of hours by the time the story's through. And of the 3 movies that I've seen so far by Justin Kurzel, I think this is the strongest. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if this movie develops a small but passionate cult following over time. But once again, it's not for everybody. I'm not even trying to claim that it's 100% for me. But if you've been craving the opportunity to see a new movie for weeks now, I think True History of the Kelly Gang at a bare minimum is worth a look. Just check out the trailer on YouTube, and if it grabs you, what you see in the trailer is pretty much what you're going to get in the movie. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I got 2 more movies that I want to watch today. After weeks of no movies coming out, suddenly we've got 3 in the same day. But we have Spike Jonze's new documentary Beastie Boys Story, which is on Apple TV+, and we got the new Chris Hemsworth action movie Extraction on Netflix. So any Friday where there are 3 new movies that I'm interested in seeing, that's a good day of movie watching as far as I'm concerned. So if you enjoyed this review, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and if you want to talk more about outlaw movies or westerns or just good old-fashioned Aussie cinema, give me a shout on Twitter at Colbrax. But I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thanks so much for watching the video, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.